Have you ever felt like a ghost haunting your own life? Like someone could look right through you and never truly see you? For years, Aubrey Lewis was just a whisper in her own existence. Her fiancé, Lucas Sterling, had sculpted her into a shadow, ashamed to introduce her to his world of old money and power. He'd whisper that she was too simple, too unpolished for his elite circle, making her believe that her only value was in her quiet grace. But Lucas had made a fatal mistake. He had not broken her. He had awakened a sleeping lioness. On this night, at the most exclusive charity gala in New York City, everything was about to change. And when she emerged in a dress the color of liquid fire, no one, not a single soul, could look away. If you've ever been underestimated, stay until the very end, because this story will move you to tears. Manhattan's Upper East Side was waking up with its usual symphony, the distant wail of sirens, the muted clang of a trash truck, and the hushed gossip escaping from luxury high-rises. In his sleek penthouse overlooking Central Park, Lucas Sterling stood as the embodiment of effortless control. At 31, he was the heir to a financial empire, a man with platinum blonde hair, perfectly coiffed, and eyes as cold as a winter sky. He was always impeccable, always 3 steps ahead, and at 28, Aubrey Lewis, with her warm brown hair and honey-colored eyes, was simply sufficient. "Honey, could you sit this one out?" Lucas's voice drifted from his study. "It's an important business dinner with international investors. You know how these things are. I need to make the right impression." Aubrey felt the familiar knot tighten in her stomach. It was the 4th time this month he had excluded her. She walked to the window, gazing at the glittering lights of the city below, and wondered if she too could ever shine with such intensity. "But Lucas," she murmured, pulling at the sleeve of the simple beige sweater she had chosen for the evening. "I thought maybe this time." "Aubrey, please." He appeared in the doorway, a vision in a $1,000 Italian suit. His icy blue eyes held that expression she had come to dread, a mixture of pity and mild irritation. "You don't understand this world. These men are used to women with more presence. You're beautiful in your own way, but you just don't have the glamour these situations require." Each word was a dagger wrapped in velvet. Aubrey's cheeks burned, not from shame, but from a rage that had been fermenting for months. But as always, she swallowed it silently. "I understand," she whispered, watching a couple of tourists below, laughing and embracing, completely unbothered by who was watching. "It's just, we've been engaged for 2 years. People are going to start asking why you never bring me anywhere." Lucas sighed theatrically, walking over to take her hands. His fingers, always cool, were a stark contrast to her own. "My love, don't you see how lucky you are? Other men in my position would have affairs, keep glamorous mistresses, but I chose you. You, with your simplicity and your natural charm. Isn't that enough?" This is a story for every woman who has ever been told she wasn't enough. If that's you, leave a heart in the comments. You are not alone in this. That night, as Lucas dressed for his exclusive dinner, Aubrey stayed at the window, watching the city transform into a sea of golden lights. Her reflection stared back at her, a beautiful woman who had forgotten how to be one. For 5 years, she had allowed Lucas to mold her, to quiet her spontaneous laughter because it was too loud, to swap her vibrant clothes for neutral tones that wouldn't draw attention. But tonight, something had snapped. Maybe it was the way he had said lucky, as if being with him was her life's grand prize. Or maybe it was seeing those tourists, so free to be themselves. Her phone vibrated with a text from her best friend, Sophie. "Aubrey, remember the big charity gala this weekend? The one at the Met? My cousin got extra invitations. Want to go? It's been ages since we've had a night out." Aubrey read the message 3 times. She knew exactly which gala Sophie meant. It was the social event of the year, where the city's most influential elite, from billionaires to artists, would gather. Lucas had mentioned it, of course, always making it clear he would attend alone to network. Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed her response. "Count me in." For the first time in months, Aubrey truly smiled. It was a small, almost imperceptible smile, but it held the seed of something Lucas had believed was extinguished forever. Her inner fire. The next day, she walked through the boutiques of Madison Avenue with a new sense of purpose. She entered the studio of a legendary designer known for creating dresses that turned women into goddesses. "I'm looking for something special," she told the saleswoman, an elegant woman who looked at her with knowing eyes. "For what occasion, dear?" "To remind myself who I am," Aubrey replied. The saleswoman smiled a smile that spoke of years of seeing women reclaim their power. "I think I have just what you need." Have you ever felt like you needed to remind yourself who you really are? Hit the like button if you think Aubrey is about to change her life forever. Later, Lucas found her reading in the living room, seemingly the same quiet woman she had always been. He didn't notice the new sparkle in her eyes, nor the subtle way she had begun to straighten her shoulders. He didn't see the designer bag hidden in her closet, or the appointment confirmed at the city's most exclusive salon. On Saturday morning, while Lucas was gone to take care of a few things before the gala, Aubrey's heart pounded like a war drum as she walked into the salon. "Tonight, when you walk in wherever you're going, we want the world to stop," said Carla, the head stylist, as she studied Aubrey's face. "You've been hiding your natural beauty. Today, we're going to set it free." For the next 4 hours, Aubrey underwent a transformation that was as much spiritual as it was physical. Her waves were sculpted into an elegant yet sensual updo, and her makeup enhanced her eyes with a smoky look that intensified her gaze. Her lips were painted a deep coral, perfectly complementing the dress that waited for her at home. When it was time to get dressed, Aubrey walked to her closet with firm steps. There it was, the coral masterpiece. It was a work of art, a creation that embraced every curve of her body without being vulgar, with a flowing drape that suggested power in every movement. The color seemed made for her, making her glow as if lit from within. As she fastened her grandmother's pearl earrings, Aubrey looked in the mirror and, for the first time in years, recognized the woman staring back. This was not the dull shadow Lucas had created. This was the real Aubrey. Strong, beautiful, radiant. Her phone buzzed with the text from Lucas. "We'll be out late. Don't wait up." Aubrey read the message and smiled. For the first time in 5 years, she too had plans. Plans that didn't involve waiting for him, hiding, or being invisible. She took her clutch and walked to the door. New York was waiting, and tonight, she was ready to shine. The Metropolitan Opera House stood like a modern jewel in the heart of the city, its facade shining under the night lights. Tonight, the masterpiece was the stage for the most important social event of the year, the annual gala. Rolls-Royces and Bentleys lined the entrance as photographers from exclusive magazines captured the arrival of New York's elite. Aubrey arrived in a private car. As it pulled up, she felt her heart pound. But it wasn't fear. It was pure anticipation. "Miss," the driver said, looking at her in the rearview mirror. "If I may say, you're going to own this city tonight." Aubrey smiled, adjusting the silk gloves that completed her look. "I hope so." The car door opened, and a doorman offered his hand. The moment her heels touched the red carpet, a hush fell over the crowd. Flashes began to fire in her direction as people's murmurs died down. All eyes converged on her. The coral dress moved like liquid fire with every step, its vibrant color a dramatic contrast to the sea of black and navy that dominated the event. She wasn't just beautiful. She was magnetic. It was impossible not to look at her. Have you ever felt that moment when you know everything is about to change? Leave a comment if you think Aubrey is living her power moment. Sophie was waiting for her at the entrance, a vision in a midnight blue gown. But when she saw Aubrey, her eyes filled with tears of emotion. "Oh my God, Aubrey," she whispered, taking her hands. You're absolutely radiant. What did you do?" "I reminded myself who I am," Aubrey replied, her voice now filled with a new firmness, a confidence that had been dormant for years. They moved through the lobby, and the architecture seemed to be designed specifically to enhance Aubrey's beauty. Every detail conspired to make her the center of a living work of art. The main hall was transformed into a dream garden. Flower arrangements of white roses and orchids hung from the ceiling, while floating candles created an intimate atmosphere. A chamber orchestra played classical music, and waiters in impeccable uniforms served champagne and canapés. But none of that magnificence mattered, because every eye was on the woman in the coral dress. "Who is she?" Aubrey heard a distinguished older woman whisper to her companion. "I don't recognize her," a man with a European accent replied, "but she's absolutely striking." Aubrey walked through the room with a natural grace that had been hidden for years. Every step was a statement, every smile a revelation. She stopped, discreetly observing the crowd. And then she saw him. Lucas was at the opposite end of the room, impeccable as ever, in his Tom Ford tuxedo, surrounded by a group of older men who hung on his every word. But what made Aubrey's heart stop wasn't seeing him, but seeing the woman by his side. She was tall, blonde, with the kind of cool, calculated beauty seen on the covers of magazines. Her black dress was impeccable, but predictable, and the way she hung on Lucas's arm spoke of a familiarity that hadn't begun tonight. Sophie followed her gaze and immediately understood. "That's my fiancé," Aubrey finished. But strangely, she didn't feel the pain she had expected. Instead, she felt something far more powerful. Clarity. She watched as Lucas laughed with the blonde woman, as he whispered in her ear, and introduced her with the pride he had never shown for Aubrey. The way he touched her, protective and possessive, was identical to how he had acted with Aubrey during the first months of their relationship, before she had begun to embarrass him. "How long do you think this has been going on?" Sophie asked, her voice tense with indignation. Aubrey took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter's tray and drank slowly, savoring the golden bubbles. "Probably months," she replied, with a calmness that surprised even herself. "Maybe years. The signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them." At that moment, as if he had felt her gaze, Lucas turned his head. Aubrey saw the exact moment his brain processed what his eyes were seeing. Shock, disbelief, and then something that looked a lot like panic. The champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. Hit the like button if you've ever had that moment of shock when you discovered the truth you didn't want to see. The blonde woman followed Lucas's gaze, and when she saw Aubrey, her expression went from confident to confused. It was obvious she knew exactly who Aubrey was, which meant Lucas had talked about her. He had likely described her as the simple woman he was engaged to out of convenience, the one who never accompanied him to events because she wasn't glamorous enough. Lucas quickly excused himself from his group and began to walk toward her. But Aubrey was no longer where he had seen her. With a feline grace, she had moved through the crowd, leaving a trail of admiring glances and whispers of curiosity. "Excuse me," an older, distinguished man with gray hair approached her. "May I introduce myself? I'm Edward Miller. I don't believe we've met before, and believe me, I would remember someone like you." Aubrey extended her hand elegantly. "Aubrey Lewis, a pleasure." "The pleasure is all mine, Miss Lewis. May I ask what you do? Are you an actress? A model?" You have an absolutely magnetic presence." Before Aubrey could answer, another voice joined the conversation. "Edward, I see you've already met the most beautiful woman at the gala." It was Victoria Caldwell, one of the city's most influential socialites. "Darling, your dress is absolutely divine. Is that a custom piece?" "It is," Aubrey replied, feeling the conversation envelop her naturally. "I have to admit, it's the first time I've worn a custom design." "Well, it should be the first of many," Edward interjected. "Would you be interested in accompanying me to the next opera gala? My wife passed away last year, and I must admit, I miss having an elegant arm candy for these events." More people began to approach the small circle that had formed around Aubrey. A duke from London, a Parisian fashion executive, a film producer who had won an Oscar. Everyone wanted to meet her. They wanted to be near that magnetic energy she radiated. For the first time in years, Aubrey felt seen. Not just looked at, but truly seen. These high-powered people, accustomed to the best of everything, found her fascinating. They wanted to know her opinions, hear her stories, be in her orbit. From across the room, Lucas watched with a mixture of awe and something that looked dangerously like fear. The woman he had taken for granted for 5 years, the one he had hidden because she wasn't glamorous enough, had become the magnetic center of the year's most important social event. The blonde woman by his side followed his gaze with growing irritation. "Who is that, Lucas?" she asked in a tense voice. "You didn't say you were coming with someone." "I didn't come with her," Lucas murmured, but his eyes couldn't leave Aubrey. She's my fiancée." The silence that followed was deafening. The blonde woman looked at him as if he had grown a second head. "Your fiancée? That goddess is your fiancée, and you told me she was boring? You told me she was too simple to accompany you to events like this?" Lucas had made the classic mistake of a man who underestimates his woman. He had spoken poorly of Aubrey to justify his infidelity, painting her as someone inferior to make his betrayal feel less like a betrayal and more like a natural upgrade. But now, seeing Aubrey shine like a star in the middle of the most exclusive room in the city, surrounded by European elite who were literally lining up to talk to her, Lucas realized the magnitude of his error. He hadn't underestimated a simple woman. He had betrayed a queen who had simply forgotten her crown. If you think Lucas is starting to realize what he's losing, hit the like button on this video. The story is just beginning. The orchestra began to play a waltz, and Edward Miller extended his hand to Aubrey. "Will you grant me this dance, Miss Lewis?" Aubrey smiled, a smile that held years of lost dances, of rejected invitations, of nights spent waiting alone while her fiancé danced with more appropriate women. "It would be an honor, Mr. Miller." As he led her to the center of the dance floor, Aubrey felt every eye in the room follow her. The coral dress moved like liquid fire under the crystal chandeliers, and for the first time in 5 years, Aubrey Lewis was not invisible. She was incandescent. The music filled the grand hall as Aubrey danced with Edward, moving with a grace that seemed to have been waiting for years to be released. Every turn, every step, every swirl of her coral dress created waves of admiration among the guests who had stopped to watch. "You are an exceptional dancer," Edward murmured as he guided her in an elegant spin. "Did you take classes?" "Since I was a child," Aubrey replied, her body remembering the freedom of unrestricted movement. "But I stopped dancing a long time ago. May I ask why? It would be a crime to waste such a natural talent." Aubrey looked toward where Lucas was still watching her, his face a mask of confusion and growing alarm. The blonde woman beside him had begun to show signs of irritation, clearly uncomfortable with the attention her supposed escort was giving to another woman. "Let's just say someone made me believe it was inappropriate to draw too much attention to myself." Edward followed her gaze and his expression hardened slightly. As a man of the world, he immediately recognized toxic dynamics. Well, that person clearly didn't know the true value of what they had. The music came to an end, and the hall erupted in applause. But it wasn't a polite ovation for the orchestra. It was applause for Aubrey, for the way she had transformed a simple waltz into a demonstration of elegance and grace that had captivated the entire room. Have you ever had that moment where you reclaim a part of yourself you thought was lost? Comment yes if you feel a connection to Aubrey. As Edward escorted her back to the circle of admirers, Aubrey saw that Lucas had finally decided to act. He excused himself from the blonde woman and began to walk toward her with determined steps, his jaw tight and his eyes shining with something between anger and panic. Aubrey. His voice was louder than he intended when he reached the group. Could we talk in private? The conversation circle immediately fell silent. Edward Miller raised an eyebrow. Victoria Caldwell smiled, with the anticipation of someone who smelled high society drama, and the rest of the guests exchanged knowing glances. Aubrey looked at him with a calm she hadn't felt in years. This was the moment she had been waiting for, without even knowing it. The final confrontation. Of course, she replied in a serene voice. Excuse me, gentlemen. I'll be right back. Lucas led her to one of the side terraces, a private space with a view of the nighttime city, spreading out like a tapestry of golden lights. Once alone, the air between them thickened with 5 years of unresolved tension. What the hell are you doing here? The words left Lucas like an accusation, all pretense of politeness abandoned. Aubrey leaned elegantly against the terrace railing, the coral dress creating a dramatic contrast against the dark city backdrop. I'm attending a charity gala, Lucas, the same as you apparently. Don't play dumb with me, Aubrey. You know perfectly well this isn't your scene. Who brought you? How did you get an invitation? The audacity of his question struck her like a slap. After 5 years together, 2 of them engaged, he still saw her as someone who needed his permission to exist in the world. My scene, she repeated slowly, savoring the words. And what exactly is my scene, Lucas? The kitchen of your penthouse? The terrace where you leave me waiting while you socialize with more appropriate people? Lucas ran his hands through his hair, messing up his perfectly styled coif for the first time all night. It's not that, and you know it. It's just, look, Aubrey, I come to these events for business. I need to maintain a specific image, make important contacts. When I bring someone, that person reflects directly on me. And you don't reflect well on me, do you? Is that not exactly it, Lucas? Aubrey's voice rose slightly, but she maintained her composure. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been embarrassed by me for years. You've hidden me away like I'm your dirty secret while you... Her eyes shifted toward the interior of the hall, where the blonde woman was still waiting for him. While you bring your important contacts to events like this. Lucas followed her gaze and paled. He realized that Aubrey had seen the truth, connected the dots, and understood exactly what had been happening. Aubrey, let me explain. Explain what? How long you've been with her, Lucas? Months? Years? How many times did you tell me you had business dinners when you were really with her? Lucas's silence was more revealing than any confession. Aubrey felt the last pieces of the puzzle fall into place. The whispered phone calls, the sudden trips, the nights he came home smelling of a different perfume he attributed to female clients. Hit the like button if you think Aubrey is finally seeing the whole truth. Sometimes the lies all fall apart at once. 6 months, Lucas finally admitted, his voice barely a whisper. But Aubrey, you have to understand, Isabel is different. She comes from my world. She understands the expectations. She knows how to behave in these situations. With you, I always had to, what, be ashamed of me? Protect you, he exploded. Protect you from a world that can be cruel to people who don't understand its rules. Do you think I haven't seen how some of those women can tear apart someone they consider inferior? I was protecting you from humiliation." Aubrey looked at him as if she were seeing him for the first time. The audacity of his twisted logic left her momentarily speechless. "You were protecting me?" Her voice was dangerously low. "By keeping me hidden, like I was something to be ashamed of, while you built a parallel relationship with a woman you considered worthy of appearing in public with you?" "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple, Lucas." Aubrey straightened up, and for the first time in their conversation, he had to look up to meet her eyes. "For 5 years, you made me believe that I was the problem, that I was too simple, too common, too insufficient for your sophisticated world. You convinced me I should be grateful that a man like you would tolerate me." "Aubrey, I'm not finished." Her voice resonated on the terrace, filled with years of pent-up frustration. "You made me change everything about myself. My clothes, my friends, my passions. You turned me into a dull version of myself because you decided the real Aubrey wasn't enough for you. But tonight, Lucas, tonight I remembered something I had forgotten. I'm not the one who isn't enough. You were the one who wasn't enough for me." In the main hall, the orchestra had begun to play a new piece, but the music seemed far away compared to the roar of blood in Aubrey's ears. Years of pain, of self-doubt, of minimizing herself, were finally finding their voice. "Have you seen how I've been received tonight?" she continued, her voice gaining strength with every word. "Have you seen how Edward Miller, a man who controls a major investment group, has treated me as an equal? How Victoria Caldwell, a woman who can make or break careers with a single word, has sought my company?" Lucas didn't answer, but his eyes showed a growing, terrified understanding. "They have seen me, Lucas, the real me, and they haven't just accepted me, they've celebrated me. In one night, I've received more respect and admiration from complete strangers than you have given me in 5 years. But I love you," he began. No. The word left her with a finality that cut the air like a knife. "You don't love Aubrey Lewis. You loved the idea of having someone safe at home, someone who would never challenge you, never make you feel inadequate, never shine so brightly as to cast a shadow on you. You loved having a beautiful but controllable woman who would make you feel powerful and superior." From inside the hall came the sound of laughter and conversation. Life went on. People were still enjoying the night, oblivious to the drama unfolding on the terrace. But for Aubrey, this moment was the center of everything, the breaking point between the woman she had been and the woman she was becoming. "The real Aubrey," she continued. "The woman you just saw dance in that room. The woman who has captivated some of the most influential people in New York. That woman scares you, because you know she would never settle for crumbs of attention. She would demand to be treated like the queen she is. If you've ever had to remind someone of your own worth, leave a heart in the comments." Aubrey is reclaiming her power. Lucas attempted one last desperate move. He took her hands with the familiarity of years together. "Aubrey, please, we can fix this. I can end things with Isabel tonight. We can start over, do things right, I promise." For a moment, Aubrey felt the familiar temptation to give in, to accept the crumbs he offered, because they were better than loneliness. It was the pattern of their entire relationship. He would hurt her. She would threaten to leave. He would make grand promises. She would give in. But tonight was different. Tonight, she had remembered how it felt to be admired, respected, and desired for who she truly was. She gently pulled her hands away from his. "Lucas," she said softly, 6 months ago, when you decided to start a relationship with Isabel, you made a choice. You decided that I wasn't enough for you. You decided you deserved something better." She paused, letting the words settle between them. "Tonight, I have made the same choice." The silence that followed was absolute. Not even the noise of the city seemed to penetrate the bubble of finality that had been created around them. "What are you saying?" Lucas's voice was barely a whisper. Aubrey took the engagement ring off her left hand. The 2-carat diamond, which had once represented all her hopes and dreams, now looked small and insignificant in her palm. "I'm saying it's over, Lucas. I'm saying that for the first time in 5 years, I'm choosing myself." She held out the ring, but he made no move to take it. His eyes were fixed on her face, as if he were seeing a stranger. "You can't be serious. I have never been more serious in my life." Aubrey placed the ring on the marble table of the terrace, where the lights of the gala made it shine like a fallen star. "Isabel is waiting for you," she said, smoothing down her coral dress. "Don't keep her waiting any longer. And Lucas, when you tell her about this conversation, be sure to tell her the truth about who I really am. It might be helpful for her to know." Without waiting for a response, Aubrey walked toward the door that connected the terrace to the main hall. Every step was an affirmation, every movement a declaration of independence. "Aubrey!" Lucas's voice followed her, desperate now. "You can't just leave. We have a life together. We have plans." She stopped at the threshold without turning back. "We had your plans for my life, Lucas. That's very different." And with those words, she returned to the hall, where Edward Miller was waiting for her with a warm smile and a fresh glass of champagne. "Everything all right, dear?" he asked, with the discretion of a gentleman who had lived long enough to recognize a significant moment. "Everything is perfect," Aubrey replied, taking the glass and drinking deeply. "Where were we in our conversation about the next opera season?" As she re-entered the elegant and intellectually stimulating conversation, Aubrey felt something she hadn't experienced in years: pure freedom. On the terrace, Lucas stood beside the abandoned ring, finally comprehending the magnitude of what he had just lost. He hadn't lost a compliant woman he could mold at will. He had lost a queen who had finally remembered her crown. 3 months later, the rise of a queen. The April sun danced on the waves of the Hudson River as Aubrey walked along the Brooklyn waterfront, which had been transformed into one of the city's most elegant spots. She wore a white linen dress that floated in the sea breeze, and her steps had that natural confidence she had rediscovered that night at the gala. 3 months had passed since the gala. 3 months that had changed her life in ways she could never have imagined. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sophie. "Ready for your big day? See you at the hotel in an hour." Aubrey smiled, tucking the phone into her designer handbag, a gift she had bought for herself last week. Today was the official launch of Aubrey Lewis Consulting, her new company specializing in corporate image and public relations for international businesses. The idea had come to her 2 weeks after the gala, when Edward Miller had contacted her for advice on a PR crisis. "You have a natural insight into how people perceive things," he had told her. "And after seeing how you transformed the entire energy of that gala just with your presence, I know you have the talent to help others do the same. Have you ever discovered a talent you didn't know you had?" Hit the like button if you believe in new beginnings. The first case had been a resounding success. Edward had implemented all her suggestions, and the crisis had not only been resolved, but the company had emerged stronger. The news spread through New York's business circles like wildfire. Victoria Caldwell had been the second to contact her, followed by the English Duke she had met at the gala, and then by a chain of referrals that had turned what began as a favor into a thriving business with a 3-month waiting list. Aubrey had rented a chic office on Madison Avenue, just 2 blocks from the penthouse she had once shared with Lucas. It was ironic that her new life was unfolding so close to her old one, but there was something deeply satisfying about that proximity. Every day, as she walked to her office, she passed the places where she had once felt invisible. Now, she walked as a completely transformed woman. Her phone rang. It was a call from London. "Miss Lewis, my name is Marguerite Dubois. I'm the Director of Communications for International Lux Group. Edward Miller has told me wonderful things about your work. We have a delicate situation that requires exactly the kind of insight he described. Of course, Madame Dubois. How can I help? Would you prefer to speak in person? Would you be willing to come to London next week? All expenses covered, of course, plus our usual fees for international consultations. Aubrey looked towards the Hudson, where luxury yachts bobbed gently at the piers. 4 months ago, a sudden trip to London would have required Lucas's approval, a discussion about whether it was appropriate for her to travel alone, a series of worries about what it would look like for his fiancée to have a life of her own. I would be delighted to meet with you. Is Tuesday morning convenient? After finalizing the details, Aubrey continued her walk, stopping at one of the elegant cafes that lined the water. She ordered an iced coffee and sat on the terrace, watching people come and go. Aubrey? She turned to find a familiar face. Isabel, the blonde woman on Lucas's arm that night at the gala. She looked significantly less polished than the last time Aubrey had seen her, with dark circles under her eyes and a tension in her shoulders that spoke of recent stress. Isabel, Aubrey replied with neutral courtesy. How are you? Can I sit with you for a moment? Her voice held a vulnerability Aubrey hadn't expected. Of course. Isabel sat down, ordered an espresso, and for several minutes, neither spoke. Finally, the blonde woman broke the silence. I wanted to apologize, she said without looking directly at Aubrey, for what happened, for my part in all of it. Aubrey studied her face. There was no trace of the arrogant confidence she had shown at the gala. How are things with Lucas? Aubrey asked, though she already suspected the answer from Isabel's appearance. A bitter laugh escaped the other woman's lips. He ended things with me 3 weeks ago. Apparently, I was no longer what he needed in his life. She made air quotes with her fingers. Can you believe it? After 6 months of promising me he was going to leave his fiancée for me, after I ended my own relationship for him, he just discarded me. Aubrey felt a wave of unexpected compassion. She recognized the pain in Isabel's voice because she herself had felt it for years. Can I ask you something? Isabel continued. That night at the gala, the way you looked, the way you acted, were you always like that? Because Lucas had described someone completely different to me. Have you noticed how people who hurt us often end up repeating the same patterns? Comment if you think Lucas is showing his true nature. What exactly did he tell you? Aubrey asked, though part of her no longer wanted to know the answer. He said you were sweet, but without ambition. Attractive, but without sophistication. That he loved you, but that he needed someone who could accompany him on his social climb. Isabel looked her directly in the eye for the first time. That you didn't understand his world, and that he didn't want to hurt you by showing you what you couldn't reach. The words hit Aubrey like an echo of conversations she had with Lucas for years. It was exactly the kind of narrative he built to justify his actions. He wasn't the villain. He was the protector. He wasn't hurting anyone. He was being considerate. And you believed him? Completely. Until I saw you that night. Isabel took a sip of her coffee, her hands trembling slightly. The way the entire room gravitated toward you, the way you spoke with those powerful people as if you were one of them. I realized that either Lucas had been terribly underestimating you, or he had been lying to me about who you really were. Probably both, Aubrey replied calmly. After the gala, he was obsessed with you for weeks, constantly checking your social media, asking mutual acquaintances what you were doing, where you were working. When he found out about your new company, Isabel paused. He went crazy. He couldn't believe you had built something so successful so quickly. Aubrey raised an eyebrow. You're following my career? Obsessively. And when he started to read about your clients, about the international contracts you were getting. Isabel smiled for the first time since she had sat down. I think he finally realized what he had lost. And that led him to break up with you, among other things. It turned out that once he had full access to your penthouse again, he found some of your things he hadn't returned. Clothes, books, photographs. Isabel's voice became softer. I found him one night looking at a photo of you from years ago, before you met. You were wearing a bright red dress, and you were laughing. You looked radiant. Aubrey remembered that photo. It had been taken at a birthday party before she met Lucas, when she still wore vibrant colors and allowed herself to shine without apology. I asked him why he had that photo, Isabel continued, and he said he had never seen that version of you during your relationship, that he now realized maybe he had snuffed out that light. And what did you say? I told him that maybe the light hadn't been snuffed out, but liberated, and that now it was shining for the whole world, just not for him. The two women sat in silence, watching the boats in the harbor. Finally, Isabel spoke again. There's something else I wanted to tell you. 2 weeks ago, he tried to contact you. He called your office, but your assistant told him you were in meetings all day. He tried 3 times. I know, Aubrey replied. My assistant has instructions not to put his calls through. Aren't you even curious about what he wanted to say? Aubrey considered the question seriously. 3 months ago. The idea that Lucas was looking for her would have sent her heart into a frantic race of hope and pain. She would have analyzed every possible reason, every reconciliation scenario. Now, she simply didn't care. Isabel, she said finally, 3 months ago, I would have given anything to get a call from Lucas begging for forgiveness. I would have run back to him without hesitation. But now, I realize that his regret has nothing to do with me. He doesn't regret hurting me. He regrets losing something valuable. Aubrey smiled, a smile that held years of wisdom gained through pain. Those are 2 completely different things. Isabel nodded slowly. You're right, and I was foolish enough to believe that it would be different with me. You weren't foolish, Isabel. He's very good at making women believe that we are the problem, not him. They rose from the cafe at the same time, preparing to continue their separate days. Aubrey, Isabel said before leaving. For what it's worth, after seeing who you really are, I understand why he's obsessed. But I also understand why you're no longer available for that obsession. Hit the like button if you think true power comes from no longer needing the validation of those who hurt you. As Isabel walked away, Aubrey stayed at the cafe for a moment longer, reflecting on the conversation. It was strange how the universe sometimes brought clarity from the most unexpected sources. Her phone vibrated with a message from her assistant. Reminder, meeting with the London team at 4 p.m., and Vogue USA wants to schedule an interview about successful female entrepreneurs. Aubrey smiled, finished her coffee, and headed toward her office. She had an empire to build, and for the first time in years, she didn't have to ask anyone for permission to shine as brightly as she wanted. Somewhere in New York, Lucas was probably still obsessing over what he had lost. But Aubrey was no longer available to be the solution to his regrets. She was too busy being the answer to her own dreams. 6 months later, the end of a chapter. The beginning of everything. The Shard stood majestically against the golden London evening sky, its lights beginning to twinkle as Aubrey walked through the city after her final meeting with the International Lux Group. Her new contract, the largest of her career to date, was signed and safely tucked away in her briefcase. She had spent the last week in London, working with the communications team of the most prestigious luxury goods company in Europe. Her proposal had been so innovative, so different from anything they had seen before, that the CEO had decided to expand the original project to include their operations in 3 more countries. As she walked through the city's most famous avenue, Aubrey reflected on the path that had led her to this moment. 6 months ago, she was hidden in the shadows of another man's life, believing that her worth depended on his approval. Now, multinational corporations were seeking her out specifically for her unique vision and ability to transform perceptions. Her phone rang with a call from Sophie in New York. "Aubrey, how was the final meeting?" "Better than I could have dreamed," she replied, stopping in front of a storefront to admire a dress that had caught her attention. They not only accepted the original proposal, they want to expand it across Europe. "Oh my God, that's amazing. Are we celebrating when you get back?" "Absolutely, although..." Aubrey looked at her reflection in the window, seeing the confident and successful woman she had become. "I think I'm already celebrating every day, just by being who I am now." Have you ever had that moment when you realize your life is finally yours? Comment free if you feel a connection. After ending the call, Aubrey decided to walk to her hotel through London's side streets, enjoying the charming architecture and the romantic atmosphere. As she passed an elegant cafe near the Thames, a familiar voice stopped her dead in her tracks. Aubrey Lewis? She turned to find Edward Miller, the man who had danced with her that transformative night at the gala. He was sitting on the cafe terrace with another man, an older, distinguished-looking gentleman. Edward smiled genuinely as he approached their table. "What a surprise to find you in London. The pleasure is all mine, dear. Could you join us for a few minutes? There's someone I'm dying to introduce you to." The man with Edward rose courteously. He was tall, in his 50s, with immaculately styled silver hair and gray eyes that radiated intelligence and power. "Aubrey, this is Olivier Dubois, CEO of the Lux International Group." Aubrey's eyes widened in surprise. This was the man whose company had just hired her, though she hadn't met him personally during the negotiations. "Monsieur Dubois," she said, extending her hand. "It's an honor to finally meet you." Olivier took her hand and kissed it lightly, in the traditional European style. "Mademoiselle Lewis, the honor is entirely mine. Edward has been telling me about you for months, but I must admit that after working with your team this week, I understand why you are so legendary in business circles." Aubrey sat with them, and for the next hour, the conversation flowed from business to art, from travel to philosophy. It was the kind of intellectual exchange she had missed for years, the kind of conversation where her mind could expand and shine. "Aubrey," Edward said eventually, "I must ask you something I've been curious about since we met. That night at the gala, there was something in your demeanor that suggested someone who had been hidden for a long time. Am I wrong?" Aubrey considered the question, taking a sip of her wine. "You're not wrong," she finally replied. "I had spent years believing I had to minimize myself to be loved. That night was the first time in a long time that I allowed myself to be completely myself." "And what caused that change?" Olivier asked, clearly intrigued. "I realized I had been living my life on someone else's terms, and it was time to write my own." The two men exchanged a look that Aubrey couldn't fully interpret. "Aubrey," Olivier said, "would you be interested in having dinner with us tomorrow? There's a proposal I'd like to make, one that could completely change the scope of your career." That night, in her luxury hotel suite, Aubrey found herself standing on the balcony that overlooked the lights of London, reflecting on the unexpected turns her life had taken. Her phone buzzed with a message from a number she hadn't seen in months. It was Lucas. "Aubrey, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I've been following your career, and I realize how blind I was. Please, could we talk? I'm willing to fly wherever you are." Aubrey read the message twice, waiting to feel something. Pain, anger, nostalgia, even satisfaction. But the only thing she felt was emptiness. Not the painful emptiness of loss, but the quiet emptiness of complete indifference. She deleted the message without replying. Hit the like button if you think true healing is when you no longer feel anything for the person who hurt you. The next day, dinner with Edward and Olivier took place at a restaurant overlooking the city. As they dined, Olivier presented his proposal. "Aubrey, we want to offer you something we have never offered anyone. a position as the global director of brand transformation for the entire Lux Group. You would be based in London, but travel all over the world, working directly with me, to revolutionize how the world's most prestigious companies communicate with their audiences. Aubrey nearly choked on her champagne. Excuse me? You have shown a unique ability to understand not only how to transform external perception, but how to help organizations rediscover their true identity, Olivier continued. That is exactly what we need in a world where authenticity has become the greatest luxury of all. Edward smiled, watching the look of astonishment on Aubrey's face. Did you know that 3 of the companies you've advised in the last 6 months have reported revenue increases of 40% after implementing your strategies? It's not just about image, Aubrey. It's about helping organizations find and express their soul. The salary would be considerable, Olivier added. But more important than that, you would have complete creative freedom and the resources to literally change how the world of luxury business communicates with itself and its clients. Aubrey looked out the window at the city lights, remembering the woman she had been just 1 year ago. A woman who had believed her greatest aspiration should be to be accepted into another person's world. Now, the world was coming to her. When would you need an answer? She finally asked. Take all the time you need, Olivier replied. But I hope you understand that this position was created specifically for you. We are not looking for anyone else. After dinner, as she walked alone along the river, Aubrey felt a deep peace settle in her soul. The water reflected the lights of the bridges, creating a spectacle of beauty that rivaled any work of art. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from an unknown international number. Miss Lewis, I am Dr. Victoria Caldwell's assistant. Mrs. Caldwell has asked me to inform you that you have been nominated for the International Innovative Businesswoman Award. The ceremony will be in New York next month. Would you be available to attend? Aubrey stopped in the middle of a bridge, looking at the city's skyline. 1 year ago, her greatest recognition had been that Lucas tolerated her in his life. Now, she was being recognized internationally for her own merit, for her own brilliance, for her own vision. 1 month later, the Queen's victory at the International Innovative Businesswoman Awards ceremony in New York, Aubrey walked onto the stage of a historic theater, dressed in a stunning golden gown that seemed to have been woven from sunbeams. As she held her award and looked out at the audience filled with the world's most powerful and influential women, she remembered the woman she had been just 1 year ago, hidden, diminished, believing that her worth depended on someone else's approval. This award, she said in her acceptance speech, is not just for me. It is for every woman who has been made to feel like she is too much of something, too bright, too ambitious, too powerful. It is for every woman who has been convinced that she must minimize herself to be loved. Her voice resonated throughout the historic theater, reaching not only the women present, but the millions watching the live broadcast around the world. I have learned that true love, whether it's romantic, familial, or professional, never asks you to be less than you are. True love celebrates you exactly as you are and inspires you to become everything and everything you can be. The applause was deafening, but what mattered most to Aubrey was seeing tears in the eyes of women in the audience who clearly felt seen and understood. For years, I believed I had to choose between being loved and being powerful. Today, I know that the real choice is between being authentic and being acceptable, and I choose, always and forever, to be authentic. As the lights of the theater reflected on her golden dress, Aubrey Lewis radiated a light that came from much deeper than any fabric or jewel. It was the light of a woman who had finally remembered her own magic. Somewhere in a New York penthouse, Lucas was likely watching the broadcast, finally understanding the true magnitude of what he had lost. But for Aubrey, he was merely a footnote in the story of her own transformation, because this story was never really about him. It was about a queen who had forgotten her crown, and the magnificent day she finally decided to put it back on. In the grand theater of life, every woman has a moment when she must decide. Will I be the protagonist of my own story, or a supporting actress in someone else's? Aubrey Lewis chose to be the protagonist. Not when she put on the coral dress, not when she shone at the gala, not when she built her business empire. She chose to be the protagonist the moment she decided that her worth did not depend on anyone else's approval. Because in the end, the coral dress was just fabric. The true power was in the woman who wore it. A woman who had learned that the greatest freedom is not the freedom to be loved by others, but the freedom to love yourself completely. And when a woman truly loves herself, she doesn't just transform herself. She transforms the entire world around her simply by daring to shine with her authentic light. If this story touched your heart, share it with a woman who needs to remember her own power. Hit the like button if you believe we all deserve to be the queens of our own lives, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of women who dared to shine.